Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. We are from Group 6 and now we are going to present our materials about speech act and speech events. But before that, let me to introduce my group's member. So, the first speaker is Kurnia Rahman and the second speaker is Nurfitra Awalia and the third speaker is Andi Kurniawan. And the last speaker is me, Nurul Sakin Anwar, and as moderator. But before that, let's always praise to the Almighty Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala in order the materials will be easier to be understand. So, let's jump to the first materials. Now, I would like to invite the first speakers. Time is yours.
Okay, I'm Kurnia Rahman. My student registration number is 1520101N1, and I'm the first speaker from Group 6. And in this time, I will explain about 2 points. The first is about speech act introduction, and the second is about IFIDs. So let's start from the first point about speech act introduction. Actions performed via utterances are generally called as the speech act. In English are commonly given more specific labels such as apologize, complaint, compliment, invitation, promise, or request. It's that in attempting to express themselves, people do not only produce utterances containing grammatical structures and words, but they perform an action via these utterances. The speaker normally expects that his or her communicative intention will be recognized by the hearer. Both the speaker and the hearer are usually helped in this process by the circumstances surrounding the utterances. The circumstances, including other utterances, are generally called as the speech event. In many ways, it's the nature of the speech event that determines the interpretation of the utterance as performing a particular speech act. For example, in the sentence, "This tea is really cold." In the first circumstance, on a wintry day, the speaker reaches for a cup of tea, believing that it has been freshly made, takes a sip and produces the utterance like the example. It's likely to be interpreted as a complaint. But if we change the circumstance to the really hot summer's day, with the speaker being given a glass of iced tea by the hearer taking a sip and producing the utterance, it's likely to be interpreted as a praise. And next, we move to the next slide. There are 3 kinds of act related to the producing an utterance. The first is about the locutionary act, which is the basic act of utterance or producing a meaningful linguistic expression. The second is about illocutionary act. It's performed via the communicative force of an utterance. The speaker may utter to make a statement, a novel, an explanation, or for some other communicative purpose. And the third is about the perlocutionary. It's performed with simply create an utterance with a function without intending to have an effect. Then, when the speaker will utter on the assumption that the hearer will recognize the effect, it's called perlocutionary effect. Okay? Of these 3 dimensions, the most discussed is illocutionary force. Indeed, the term speech act is generally interpreted quite narrowly to mean only the illocutionary force of an utterance. The illocutionary force of an utterance is what is called as. The same illocutionary act represents different illocutionary force, so we must remember about that. Okay, for example, in the sentence of "I'll see you later," it can count as a prediction, a promise, or a warning, because these different analysis of the utterance represent different illocutionary forces. Okay, let's move to the next slide about IFIDs. What is IFIDs actually? IFIDs, or illocutionary force indicating devices, is an expression of the type shown where there is a slot for a verb that explicitly name the illocutionary act being performed, such as a verb can be called as a performative verb. For example, I, then we use formative verb, you that. So for example, we can use the verb warn to fill the slot of formative verb. So I warn you that blah 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 blah. Okay. So, speakers do not always perform their speech act so explicitly, but they sometimes describe the speech act being performed. Okay, we can see the telephone conversation between a man trying to contact Mary and Mary's friend. Okay, the man, can I talk to Mary? And Mary's friend said that, no, he's not here. Then the man said, I'm asking you, can I talk her? And the Mary's friend said that, and I'm telling you, he's not here. So, from the conversation, we can know that each speaker has described and drawn attention to the illocutionary force about ask and tell. But, however, there's no performative verb mentioned in the conversation. Okay, let's move to the next slide. The other IFIDs which can be identified, such as word order, stress, and intonation, as shown in the different version of the same basic elements in the examples. So, in this example, there are three sentences with the same basic elements. So the first is about you are going. It's about telling someone that he or she is going. And the second is about you are going. It's about requesting a confirmation. And the third is about are you going? It's about asking someone about the condition or the situation. While other devices such as a lowered voice quality for a warning or a threat may be used to indicate a locutionary force, the utterance also has to be produced under certain conventional conditions to count as having the intended illocutionary force. So, I think that's all from me. And the next material will be explained by the second speaker. I think that's all from me. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Kurnia Rahman. Let's move to the second speakers. Nurfitra Walia, time is yours. Well, thank you. Let's jump to the next presenter. Time is yours.
Oke, bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Nurfitra Awaliyah. I am from group 6. Okay, now I want to explain to you about felicity conditions. There are certain expected or appropriate circumstances, technically known as felicity conditions, for the performance of a speech act to be recognized as intended. First, general condition. Second, preparatory condition. The third, content condition. The fourth, insertory condition. And the fifth, essential condition. Okay, the next is the performative hypothesis. The performative hypothesis is to assume that underlying every utterance there is a clause that containing a performative verb, which makes the illocutionary force explicit. The examples below shows the type of explicit and implicit. First, clean up this mess. Second, I hereby order you that you clean up this mess. And the next, the first is the work was done by Elaine and myself. The second, I hereby tell you that the work was done by Elaine and myself. The advantage of this type of analysis is that it makes clear just what elements are involved in the production and interpretation of utterances. Another advantage is to show that some adverbs, such as honestly, or adverbial clauses such as because I might be late in the example below, which naturally attach to the explicit performative clause rather than the implicit version. There are some technical disadvantages to the performative hypothesis. For example, uttering the explicit performative version of a command. It is also difficult to know exactly what the performative verb might be for some utterances, although the speaker and hearer might recognize the utterance in the example below. As an insult, it would be very strange to have an explicit version. First, you're dumber than a rock. The second, thereby insult you that you're dumber than a rock. The really practical problem with an analysis based on identifying explicit performative is that, in principle, we simply do not know how many performative verbs there are in any language. Instead of trying to list all the possible explicit performatives and then distinguish among all of them, some more general classifications of types of speech acts are usually used. Oke, thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Well, thank you. Let's jump to the next presenter. Time is yours.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Andi Kurniawan and I will continue the material of our group. Speech and classification. One general classification system lists 5 types of general function performed by speech acts: declaration, representatives, expressive, directives, and commissives. Declaration are those kind of speech acts that change the world via their utterance. The speaker has to have a special institutional role in a specific context in order to perform a declaration appropriately. A. Phrase: I now pronounce you husband and wife. B. Referee: you are out. C. Jury foreman: we find the defendant guilty. In using a declaration, the speaker changes the word via words. Representatives are those kinds of speech acts that state what the speaker believes to be the case or not, such as the statement or fact, assertions, conclusion, and descriptions, which the speaker representing the word as he or she believes it is. For example, the earth is plate. Chomsky didn't write about Venus. C. It was a warm sunny day. In using a representative, the speaker makes word fit the word or of belief. Expressive are those kind of speech acts that state what the speaker feels. They express physiological state and can be statement of pleasure, pain, like, dislike, joy, or sorrow. They can be caused by something the speaker does or the hearer does, but they are about the speaker experience. For example, I'm really sorry. Congratulations. Oh yes, great. In using expressive, the speaker makes word fit the word or of feeling. Directives are those kind of speech acts that speaker use to get someone else to do something. They express what the speaker wants. They are commands, orders, requests, suggestion, and it can be positive or negative. For example, give me a cup of coffee, make it black. Could you lend me a fan, please? Don't touch that. In using a directive, the speaker attempts to make the word fit the word, or by the hearer. Commissives are those kind of speech as that the speaker used to commit themselves to some future action. They express what the speaker intends. They are a promise, threats, revolts, pledge that can be performed by the speaker. For example, I will be back. I'm going to get it right next time. We will not to do that. In using commissives, the speaker undertakes to make the word fit the words via the speaker. Next, direct and indirect speech acts. A different approach to distinguish types of speech acts can be made on the basis of structure A fairly simple structure distinction between three general types of speech as provide: declarative, interrogative, imperative, and the three general communicative function: statement, question, comment, and request. You wear a seatbelt. That is declarative. Do you wear a seatbelt? That's interrogative. Wear a seatbelt? That's imperative. Whenever there is a whenever there is the direct relationship between a structure and function, we have a direct speech and whenever there is a direct relationship between a structure and function. We have indirect speech and those a declarative used to make a statement is a direct speech and but declarative used to make a request is indirect speech and as its illustration a declarative when it used to make statement as praise is functioning as a direct speech and when it used to make a comment or request as paraphrase is functioning as an indirect speech and. For example, it's cool outside, thereby tell you about the weather, thereby request of you that you close the door. Different structure can be used to accomplish the same basic function. Where the speaker wants to address is not to stand in front of the TV, the basic function of all the utterance is a comment or request, but only in phrase structure. Represent direct speech and the interrogative structure is not being used only a question. It's a indirect speech and. The declarative structure is and also indirect request. For example, move out the way. Do you have to stand in front of the TV? You're standing in front of the TV. You make better door than a window. One of the most common types of indirect speech act in English as shown has the form of interrogative but is not only typically used to ask questions. Indirect speech are generally associated with greater politeness than direct speech acts. Okay, I think that's all from me. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Andi Kurniawan. Now I'm going to explain about speech event. What is speech event? Speech event is an activity in which participants interact via language in some conventional way to arrive at some outcome. For example, in an indirect request of a preparatory condition, which the speaker assumes the hearer to or can perform the action, while the content condition concerns to the future action that the hearer will perform the action. For example, content condition: will you do X or will you do something, or will you do this for me? And then for example of preparatory condition: can you do this for me or can you do X? Questioning a hearer based condition for making a request result in an indirect request. Asking about precondition technically doesn't mean for making a request, but does allow the hearer to react as if the request had been met. It means that when the speaker asks about a precondition, no direct request is met. The preceding discussion is essentially about one person trying to get another person to do something without risking refusal or causing offense. However, this type of situation doesn't consist of a single utterance. It is a social situation involving the participants who necessarily have a social relationship of some kind and who, on a specific occasion, may have a particular goals. We can look at the set of utterances produced in this kind of situation as a speech event. It may include an obvious central speech act such as I don't really like this, as in speech event of complaining, but it will also include other utterances leading up to and subsequently reacting to that central action. In most cases, a request is not made by means of a single speech act suddenly uttered. Requesting is typically a speech event as illustrated in the examples below. So this is the example of uh, this is one of the example that consists a speech event in it. Okay, the extended interaction between him and her may be called a requesting speech even without the central speech act of request. Notice that there is no actual request from him to her to do anything. We might characterize the question, "Do you have a minute?" as a pre-request, allowing the receiver to say that she is busy or that she has to be somewhere else. In this context, the response "sure" is taken to be an acknowledgement not only of having time available, but a willingness to perform the unstated action. The analysis of the speech events is clearly another way of studying how more gets communicated than it is said. However, we do need to look at more extended interaction to understand how those actions are carried out and interpreted within speech events. So, I think that's all from us. If you have any question, please contact us. Thank you very much for your kind of attention. Wabillahi taufiq wal hidayah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.